Chapter 25 just picks up in the end of 24. You're really in very similar circumstances as we'll see. Talked a little bit about Festus last week. He is the new judge who has come to be the Roman procurator instead of Felix. And I think we closed out last time talking about Felix's recall back to Rome. And I was reading some of that history again this past week. Let me just say that Nero was going to execute him, and Pallas, his brother, that was best friends with Claudius, once again intervened, just like he had intervened to get him that position in the first place. And so he was sent into exile instead of being executed. These next two are just the Roman procurators from him, Festus, that is, all the way through 66. What does it end in 66? Why not? That is the beginning of the Jewish war. So the rebellion starts in 66 and is crushed completely out with the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. One of the things that's noteworthy about Festus is that he, I mentioned last week that he is the only one of all of the Roman procurators that history speaks well of, as far as his character and his role as a judge and everything. But I've often wondered, he inherits Felix's mess here. I remember we said Felix he had alienated the Jews to such an extent that he is probably, as much as any individual, was responsible for the rebellion, because it made his mismanagement made them rebel so much. Festus only serves 2 years because he dies in office. And I've often thought they had these two mop-up guys after him until he gets to war. But I've often wondered, if Festus had lived, would the rebellion have happened? I know the answer is yes, because God said it was going to happen. But as far as the mechanism that triggered it, might have been different had Festus lived. But that last paragraph is the one to note going into our text this morning. He inherited all the troubles and tensions that were mounting during Felix's maladministration, which culminated in the disaster of 66 through 70, and his term of office was cut short by his death in 62. I wanted you to understand that because immediately this morning we are going to see how being new on the job plays into the life of the Apostle Paul very significantly. So verse 1 there says, Now 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea. So what's the timestamp there?
3 days.
What, if you're new on the job, your capital is Caesarea. You get to Caesarea, and within 3 days you make the trip to Jerusalem. What's that showing you?
There was a mess going on in Jerusalem.
He, obviously he would have done his homework before coming in actually and beginning the job. He fully understands that his real problem is the Jewish leadership in Jerusalem. So literally, as soon as he gets on the job, he hightails it up to Jerusalem to meet in person with them. This was not the way the procurators usually operated. It gives you some insight into his character right away. Usually they would have always insisted on those leaders coming down to them, etc. But he's showing that. That 3 days is a little misleading, because that's the Jewish reckoning. And so what you're really looking at is he traveled to Caesarea one day He rested on day 2, and on day 3, he got up early in the morning and went to Jerusalem. So that will tell you. And remember, of course, how did he get this job? What caused the opening? Yeah.
Felix.
And remember, Felix's disasters had ended with his biggest disaster, the one where he had murdered and imprisoned a large section of the Jewish population there in Caesarea, and had taken their wealth and their possessions and confiscated it and everything. And that the Jews then had sent an envoy from Jerusalem to Rome to complain. And so he knows that, he literally has the job because this group in Jerusalem sent an envoy to Rome and got the last guy fired, and not for his brother, would have been executed. So Felix, from our perspective, gets off to a little bit of a rough start, but it's really, like I said, understanding his nature and his character from the portrayals in history. It's really just going into the job without having dealt with the Jews before, and B, getting that high pressure situation right from the start. First thing he needs to do is to calm down the Jewish leadership. So that's why it shows up that way. And the chief priest and the principal men of the Jews laid out their case against Paul. So as soon as he gets to Jerusalem, and remember, he's not going up there because of Paul. He's going up there just to establish that relationship with the leadership, show them a courtesy of him having traveled, etc. But as soon as he gets there, they want to talk about Paul, and they urged him, asking as a favor against Paul that he summon him to Jerusalem, because they were planning an ambush to kill him on the way. Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea and that he himself intended to go there shortly. So, said he, let the men of authority among you go down with me, and if there is anything wrong about the man, let them bring charges against him. So, who is it that lays out this case before Festus? It's the Jewish leadership, it's the Sanhedrin, like we talked about, it's the high priest. Maybe a good time to point out here that the high priest has changed also with the turnover of Felix and everything. So Agrippa II, whom we're going to meet very shortly, Rome had given him the power to appoint the Jewish high priest, and he had given Ananias the back of his hand and picked a new guy. So it is going to be a different high priest than we're used to. What's the favor they ask of Festus? And hey, by the way, Festus, while you're here, you got this terrible, awful, scum of the earth guy in prison down there in Caesarea. How about send him up here so we can deal with him? Why do they ask this?
They wanted to,
They're planning to kill him. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, there's a lot of repetition in here that's not repetition in the sense of the same event, but it being the same events happening as happened earlier. So they asked, what's the big difference this time in the murder plots? There are actually 3 or 4 things you might point to. No, I'm talking about with Paul's earlier, the murder plot against him earlier, that is the reason why he's in Caesarea.
Well, they took off at night with a whole bunch of...
Okay, the first thing is that when Paul traveled that time, Lysias, having had first-hand viewing of the enmity of the Jews for Paul, had sent half the garrison as a guard so that no ambush like this could take place. Guess who doesn't know any of this history?
Festus.
Festus doesn't. So they think they're being really sly and
Sneaky.
clever here. And again, if we took God's planning out of the picture and left it to men, they may very well have succeeded here. Why would Festus want to grant their request? Yeah, it's just pure politics. Just as he went up there in the first place and went up there so quickly, this on the surface to somebody just coming in sounds like you've got a terrible criminal sitting on death row just waiting to be executed. And these Jews that you're in charge of now very much want to try him themselves. There in Jerusalem according to their laws and everything. And so, you know, it would seem a very innocuous proposition and one that he might do to help him get instant favor with them. How does Festus answer?
That he would bring some with him.
Not gonna do it.
You say he's already in Caesarea? He's already in jail down there? One thing Festus would have known was how terribly Felix managed the job and how he ignored Roman law, Jewish law, and common decency on a regular basis. So I think Festus here is simply trying to set the standard that, you know, because he's in Caesarea and been sent there for trial, under Roman law, that's where his trial should take place. So what does he do to kind of soften that answer a little bit?
To bring their own, to send.
He invites them to come down and hears them face to face in the court.
Yeah. He says, I'm going to be leaving soon. So in other words, this is not like I'm putting you off forever. I'm going to be leaving soon. You can travel with me when we go, and we'll get right on this. And we'll see that he actually does that. But I think he's just trying to set the parameters, saying, hey, Felix may have done whatever he wanted to, but I'll be following Roman procedures in the way that I go out. So after he had stayed among them not more than 8 or 10 days, he went down to Caesarea. And the next day he took his seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought. When he had arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him that they could not prove. Paul argued in his defense, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I committed any offense. So again, this is pretty much a replay of what we saw earlier. And I know we read a pretty good sized block there. Chapter 25 goes fast because we're reading a lot of large blocks. And the reason for that is because most of the story is falling back on what we already know of the story. So you'll notice Luke doesn't give a bunch of details about the trial here like he does earlier and like he will in the next one. That's because there's nothing new here. They don't have any proof once again. It's the same charges. Paul basically would have given the same defense that Luke gave us more details about in 24, and so it's just the back and forth of that. How long was Festus in Jerusalem?
8 to 10 days.
8 to 10 days. It's always interested me here that that shows you that Luke is in Caesarea with Paul, not in Jerusalem, where he knows exactly the time stamp there and everything. Besides those 8 to 10 days, what other time stamp is in there?
The next day.
The next day. So again, you might think he would travel, because remember, these journeys, they're not the easiest journeys in the world. You spend all day traveling. So you might think he would rest or do some preparation time. No. He wants to get this dealt with right away. He's thinking he can appease the Jews this way. And so he goes right into court, basically. I think we covered that one. What's the situation, verse 7 is describing there? After Paul arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him, which they could not prove. That's just the repetition of what happened in the first trial in Caesarea, that there was no real trial because there was nothing done but accusations thrown out. There was no proof offered. There were no witnesses. And indeed, although I suspect Festus doesn't know it, the original accusers, who by Roman law have to be there, are not there. So how does Paul respond?
He's innocent.
I did nothing wrong.
Yeah. He says they haven't made any kind of case at all. I've already been tried. I've been found innocent. What's the holdup here? In other words, what is Paul's conclusion for Festus?
This is all garbage.
Yeah, this is all garbage. I shouldn't be in prison. We've already been through this, and just like this, there's absolutely nothing but wild accusations. And so he's just calmly giving those answers. I mainly ask that because I want you to notice that Luke, just like he does in his gospel regarding the trials of Jesus, he is focused on presenting the facts and having it well established. Remember, he's writing for the Gentile world, which at that time is the Roman world. You know, he wants to have it clearly established that Paul has never been guilty of any of the charges made against him. So his innocence is being brought out again and again. But Festus, well, there's our word of contradiction, isn't there? In other words, you were going this way. What was the last mention? Is Paul saying, I'm innocent, why am I still in chains? You know. But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, do you wish to go up to Jerusalem and there be tried on these charges before me? But Paul said, I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as you yourself know very well. If then I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death. But if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar. This is probably the most fact-laden section of the lesson here. But what does verse 9 reveal as Festus' motive in asking Paul to return to trial for Jerusalem? Yeah, he wanted to do Jews a favor. It's just more politics. Did you notice the phrase, though?
Yeah, I am not trying to avoid execution.
Well, that's a good one, too. But I was referring to wishing to do the Jews a favor. When we just heard that exact phrase. Where was it? It was at the end of 24, the very last verse. When Felix is dismissed from office, he should have set Paul free because Paul's innocence had already been established. He was only, remember, keeping him a prisoner, hoping for a bribe. But instead of freeing Paul when he is dismissed from his office, he leaves him in there. Remember, we talked about this at the end last week, to try and gain the favor of the Jews because he knows he's in big trouble with Caesar. Yeah. And so here is Festus, whom I built up for you so high, and the first thing he does is he's going to contemplate doing something wrong simply because of politics. You have to remember that Roman justice, even though our system takes a lot from it and everything, it was still very sketchy, shall we say.
In the same way it is today, money and power creates a lot of decisions that ought not to be made. You know, we have the same scenario for that.
What does it actually say about Roman justice that Felix did this? Roman justice is not the overwhelming priority of Rome. It never was. It just looks good on paper. The overwhelming priority of Rome, the reason why they conquered nations and then let nations continue as they had been and govern themselves to a great extent, and et cetera, is because the most important piece of Roman belief, government-wise, was the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. And so everything else was subjugated under the Roman peace. Is that not why Jesus was killed? Pilate also likewise knew Jesus was innocent, right? And he
That's why
established that very well. And he was going to set him free until what?
Right.
Oh, we have no king but Caesar.
Yeah.
Well, immediately that elevated that situation, the trial of Jesus, from being Roman justice to now being Roman peace. There's going to be a rebellion if he doesn't crucify Jesus. So immediately it's just, will somebody bring me some water so I can wash my hands of this? Yeah. There are amazing parallels, and we may talk about them some later if we have time this morning. But there are amazing parallels between Paul's trials and Jesus' trials and who was there, including one of the characters we're going to meet next. But Roman justice, not if it's going to interfere with the Roman peace, never. What does Paul mean? Now these are, I think, 5 statements that I question here, okay? So just have your Bible open, be in the text right there in verses 10 and 11. What does Paul mean by his first statement, that one that starts off verse 10? I am standing before Caesar's tribunal.
And he's a Roman citizen.
Not.
He is presenting himself to the government. I mean, he is protected by Caesar's oversight.
Yeah, he hasn't gone to his appeal yet, but what he's bringing out first and foremost is that there should be no further goings on legally whatsoever. There should not be a trial in Jerusalem or anywhere else. You know, the law, the Roman law, said as a Roman citizen he would be tried before Caesar's tribunal. He's now been tried before that tribunal twice, and both times found innocent, and both times instead of being set free, he's left in prison the first time, and this time he's asked, would he mind? And that, by the way, is why the judge asked him if that seems weird to you. It's because legally he should not send Paul to Jerusalem at this point. It shouldn't even be considered.
He's already had double jeopardy and he's fixing to get triple.
Yeah, he's gonna go on and on here. The second statement in the last half of 10 is when he says to the Jews, I have done no wrong, as you well know. What's that about?
We heard about what was happening with Paul.
He said, you just heard the so-called case. You know for a fact now that there is absolutely nothing to the case, and yet you're asking me if I would mind going to Jerusalem and going through another trial there. Yeah. So a lot of Paul's boldness and a lot of just standing on his Roman rights is taking place here. But he is reprimanding Festus here, saying, hey, you know that I'm innocent, and therefore that should be the end of it. What does it mean by that third statement in the beginning of verse 11? If then I am a wrongdoer, I deserve to die.
he's a criminal, if he's committed any crime.
Remember, he's talking to the judge, he's talking to Festus. What's he trying to enforce with Festus here?
If he did anything wrong, persecute him.
He's saying, I'm not doing this to avoid a just death penalty. If I've done something wrong, I'm willing to suffer the punishment for that. But we've already established that I have done nothing wrong. What's he mean in the last half when he says, but there's nothing to their charges against me? This is his nice summary, but he's closing with this, remember, and what he's closing with basically, as far as reprimanding Festus goes, is that by Roman law, you have no choice but to now set me free. So that being the case, why do we get his fifth declaration there, I appeal to Caesar?
Was he afraid that he was going to be sent back to Jerusalem and that he would have no chance there?
Festus just showed him that he can't expect Roman justice from Festus either, regardless of reputation or general consistency. If Festus has his way, he's going to do whatever it takes to keep the Roman peace, which means he's going to send Paul up to Jerusalem, which Paul knows he would never survive. By the way, did you notice that in 23 and 24, it's those 40 men that took the oath, came up with the plan to kill Jesus, and Peter, I will get there. Paul, might as well run down all 7 children while I'm at it, huh? But Paul's first ambush attempt was not planned by the priesthood, it was agreed to, remember? But now on the second go-around, it is actually their plan, the Sanhedrin's plan. So, you see how great, again, they are. But yes, he recognizes at this point, when he started reprimanding Festus, he's already recognized he's not getting justice from this guy. So he's going to reprimand him for not carrying out Roman law, and then he's going to go to his last option, literally, which is, if I got to keep being tried, then I'll be tried by Caesar. Then Festus, when he had conferred with his council, answered, to Caesar you have appealed, to Caesar you shall go. So who does Festus confer with? His council. Why does he need to do that?
So that he has backup.
Yeah, he is checking his legalities, So he's having his support team refresh him on the law. What is obligation? What was the law? As a Roman citizen, he cannot deny that appeal to Caesar unless he dismisses Paul's case. So in other words, he has to either officially pronounce Paul as innocent and let him go, or he has to send him to Caesar. It's quite a little dilemma that Paul puts him in here, but of course he got there because of his own motivations. So what do you think of his response to Paul here? I think we pretty much covered that. Let's go to verse 13 and following. Now when some days had passed, Agrippa the king and Bernice arrived at Caesarea and greeted Festus. I'm laughing inside just because, again, this is the Herod family, and I know the individuals involved history, and it's just typical. But they stayed there many days, and Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, there is a man left prisoner by Felix, and when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priest and the elders of the Jews laid out their case against him, asking for a sentence of condemnation against him. I answered that it was not the custom of the Romans to give up anyone before the accused met the accusers face to face and had opportunity to make his defense concerning the charge laid against him. And you can see there part of why I say that when Festus was up at Jerusalem, he would and said no, he was trying to enforce the fact that they were going to run according to Roman policy from here and not according to Felix's whims. Verse 17, so when they came together here, I made no delay, but on the next day took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. All right, let's have a brief history rundown. We remember the first Herod in the Bible, right? Yep. Herod the Great, the builder, the one who massacred the children, etc. And then in Jesus' time, his ministry, we dealt with Herod Antipas. He would be the one that Jesus would go on trial before as one of his trials and everything. This Herod is Herod Agrippa I, and he is the offspring of Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas was his uncle. But so like I said, they're all related. Did I not put Bernice on here? Because that would be a shame. Guess who Bernice is?
She's also related to Herod.
His sister.
His sister. You did not guess, sir. Bernice is Agrippa I's sister. So why is she with him?
Power.
It's one of the great scandals of the Roman age. She was always with her brother, very close, very intimately. Every time she would get married, she'd run off back to her brother all of a sudden. And so costs a lot, but she is one of the granddaughters of Herod Antipas there. So. And where is our scene taking place?
Caesarea. No. Jerusalem.
I almost said Hall of Justice, but the equivalent there of the Hall of Justice, because it's supposed to be a real trial now. Yeah, it's in Caesarea, but I'm talking about the room there that they're in there. So when the accuser stood up, they brought no charges in his case of such evils as I suppose. Rather, they had certain points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who was dead, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. Being at a loss how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wanted to go to Jerusalem and be tried there regarding them. I'm going to give you a hint. There's going to be a question about that. The answer is, this is a lie. This is not what we saw just happen, is it? This is a political lie. But it's another case of Festus playing the game of politics. I asked whether he wanted to go to Jerusalem and be tried there regarding them. But when Paul had appealed to be kept in custody for the decision of the emperor, I ordered him to be held until I could send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said to Festus, I would like to hear the man myself. Tomorrow, he said, you will hear him. So how did verse 21 there begin for us?
But.
Yeah, there's the word of contrast again. Why is this so terribly misleading by Festus? Really, almost everything he said. If you read that and you haven't been part of what's going on, you know, obviously we've been through his trials, but if you read that, Festus is saying basically, you know, I've done everything I can for this guy. You know, I've tried to help this guy and just can't help him. And now he's appealed to Caesar. And of course, I'm going to send him to Caesar. You see how the rush on that? Right away, he says, I'm going to send him. He is looking for some help. That's what he's doing. He's looking for some help. This is his first issue on the job. And it's the biggest issue he'll face, you know. And so Agrippa I, even though Herod's his great-grandfather, the original, etc., he was a king, but he was mainly a king appointed by Rome over Gentile colonies. But he does have that Jewish background in the family. So that is what Festus is trying to get on his side here, someone who knows it. Because the only truthful part in that whole story that's not at the very least implying something not so, is his statement about, hey, wasn't the kind of case I thought it would be at all, but instead they're just discussing points of their law and some guy named Jesus. But how does Agrippa reply to Festus's narrative?
Who wants to talk to Paul?
On a hearing
Hear
himself.
himself.
He wants to hear him for himself. Guess why Agrippa is there? Did you ever stop to wonder about that?
Agrippa and Festus are brother-in-laws, or they're related somehow. I'm not sure exactly. He married, I'm trying to recall it in my mind, he married the sister. Oh, you gotta help me out here.
I can't help you out because I don't know whatever you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know a relationship between Festus and Agrippa.
Yeah, one of the commentators said that the wife of Agrippa and Festus were related, and so they were related by marriage.
You'd think his wife would be with him then instead of Bernice, his sister.
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah, see. I'll have to work on that. I'm not sure about that. But it's very emphatic in the Greek that two things are going on here. One, Agrippa has only come because he knows Paul's a prisoner there. He does have the family history on the Jewish side. He's heard, you gotta remember, whether you want to call him famous or infamous, Paul is one of the most well-known people in the Roman world by this time. You know? So he came there because he wanted to meet Paul. And Bernice, as just a doting sister, followed along. But why are they putting it off till tomorrow? Because like I said, it's very emphatic in the Greek. Agrippa wants to hear him. He wants to hear him as soon as possible.
This is going to be a big, pompous meeting where everybody's going to be invited.
This is going to be a huge shindig. It's Festus's first opportunity to have such a thing. So, as Lord Woodland will see next week, it's going to be filled with so much pomp and ceremony. You can't just, it's not a matter of just ushering Paul in from his imprisonment. It's a case of setting up a huge government shindig. It's got to honor everybody there. Go ahead and read that during the week because I'll have some questions on that. Appreciate your attention this morning. Class dismissed.